Hi boys and girls, it is Thursday, May 20th. Welcome back to poetry in my recorded lesson. Today I want to just review the charts that we did on Tuesday, and then I want to talk a little bit more about some other words that we see when I'm talking about poetry. Read a couple poems, go over your word work for Friday, and that will be it. So, real quick again, line break practice. Remember, the cool part about poetry is you get to break up your lines and words any way that you want, okay? So here's an example of the sentence we used again. Raindrops fall gracefully from the sky. There's two ways you could break this up, and there's actually more, any way you want to do it. Raindrops fall gracefully from the sky. You hear me pause after each one, and I also know to pause because I'm going down to the next line. Raindrops fall gracefully from the sky. Again, you're saying the same thing in all three, but you can break up those words and lines the way that you want. Down here we talked about meaning in music, two different ways that we can use poetry, and then all the things in the gray are different terms we use and examples of those. So meaning, we express our feeling experiences through visual and sensory tools like image, what we see, metaphor and simile. We practice similes this week. Personification, words, line breaks, beginnings and endings. The title tells us a lot about our poems, and just observation, looking. With music, we're expressing feelings and experiences through auditory, musical, and rhythmic tools. Things like rhyme, repetition, and patterns. There's some type of rhythm or beat when we read it. There's alliteration, words again, line breaks, and automatopoeia. Okay? Some of those you're like, what do those mean? We're going to talk about them today. So, again with simile, which we practiced, is we're comparing two things and you're using the words like or as. Like the one I used the example before, Jane was as cool as a cucumber. Okay, that would be an example of a simile. A metaphor is also comparing two things, but we do not use the word like or as. So we might just say Noah has a heart of a lion. Okay, does he really have a lion heart? No, we're just comparing that he probably has a big heart because we think lions have a big heart. We're comparing two things. You did not hear me say like or as. Personification, which we saw here in this chart with poems, when we use meaning. Personification means you're giving a human quality, something humans have, or ideas that we have, and we're giving it to different things. So you might say, the wind whispered through the trees. Okay, wind doesn't really talk, but it does make noise, and it can, when it blows the trees, you hear different things rustling around. So the wind, we're comparing it to us talking. So that's a human thing, and we're comparing it to something else. Alliteration is when you repeat the same beginning sound of words throughout your sentence or your line. So something like that would be, she sells seashell. That's a tongue twister. Let me try that again. She sells seashells by the seashore. Dr. Seuss uses these a lot, okay? So the word she starts with an S, sells is an S, seashells is an S, and seashore is an S. So when you start each word with the same letter, that's alliteration. Now you can throw a couple other words in there. So if I said that again, she sells seashells by and the don't start with an S, but it's okay. Most of the words in that line had an S in it. Okay, that's alliteration. So that can also be used in poems. A lot of time it's that musical kind. And automatopoeia is when you are using imitation of sounds in word form. So if I say the word pow, that means that you are kind of imitating the sound of something by actually saying that's like boom, kaboom, those type of words. Okay, so that's when you're imitating of a sound in a word form. So that's also on this musical side. So those are just some poetry terms that we talk about. that you can use. I might say, okay, I want you to try to do a poem with 2 lines of alliteration. And that means, okay, I have to think of a sentence that I have the same beginning sound in some of my words. Or I want you to have 2, let's say, 2 personification ones, okay, where you're giving some type of nature or something, human characteristics, okay? But I would explain that to you. But just so you kind of know and are familiar with those words and what they are. All right, I'm going to read a couple poems really quick, and then I'm going to talk about your word work for Friday. Okay, so this one is another book I read from a different one of these books the other day. So this is Poetry for Young People by Edward Lear. This is a collection of poems, so it would be an anthology. This one's a little bit longer. It's called Calico Pie. Okay, so these are this type of poem here is kind of talking about different things, and then he repeats himself after each one. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 stanzas in this poem. Calico Pie. The little birds fly down to the calico tree. Their wings were blue, and they sing tilly-loo, till away they flew, and they never came back to me. They never came back, they never came back, they never came back to me. Calico Jam, the little fish swam over the syllabub sea. He took off his hat to the sole and the sprat and the willoughby wet, but he never came back to me. He never came back, he never came back, he never came back to me. Calico Band, the little mice ran to be ready in time for tea. Flippity-flop, they drank it all up and danced in the cup, but they never came back to me. They never came back to me. They never came back to me. Calico Drum, the grasshoppers come, the butterfly, beetle, and bee, over the ground, around and round, with a hop and a bound, but they never came back to me. They never came back, they never came back, they never came back to me. So there's an example from Edward Lear. And then I'm going to read one more from Emily Dickinson. And this is another anthology. She has, in this little section here, they're very short. That's one poem, that's one poem. They're very short. These, she has like 6 of these little ones in this anthology, her collection, and they are little riddles. So I want you to see if you can guess what she's describing. I'm only going to read this one. And everywhere of silver, with ropes of sand to keep it from effacing the track called land. What is she talking about? I mean, there is a picture. She's talking about the sea or the ocean, right? Okay. But that's a poem. That's it. Nice and short. Poems can be long. They can be short. It doesn't matter. It's just how you want to describe that feeling or what the meaning of your poem is going to be. Okay. Let me see. You do not have work to do after today's recorded lesson. However, I want to explain your word work for tomorrow on Friday, May 29th, okay? You are going to either print off the worksheet that is on the lesson plans. It's the last page. If you cannot print, then you are just going to write your answer on a piece of plain paper. There's 11 questions, so you basically, if you just have lined paper, just number your paper 1, 2, 3, all the way till 11. And you're going to tell me whether the sentence is a simile or a metaphor. So once again, a simile is comparing 2 things using the words like or as. A metaphor is also explaining 2 things, or comparing 2 things, I mean, but not using like or as. So, for example, I'm going to go over number 1 with you. Tom was walking as slow as a snail. What would that be? Tom was walking as slow as a snail. Well, I heard the word as, so that means it's going to be simile. If you printed the worksheet off, you just have to circle the word simile. If you didn't, next to number 1, you're going to just write simile. Number 2, his garden was a jungle of weeds. So I'm comparing a garden to weeds. But is that one a metaphor or simile? His garden was a jungle of weeds. Do you hear me say like or as? Nope. So that one is a metaphor. One more. The math test was as easy as ABC. The math test was as easy as ABC. Did you hear me say like or as? Yep. As easy as. So this one would be simile. Okay. So there's your first three answers. You can do the rest on your own or with help from someone at home. There's 11. So just write your answer, or if you printed it off, just circle it. Okay. If you have access to send me a picture of this or send me your answers, I would appreciate it. If not, go over with them with someone at home. Okay. Everybody have a great weekend, and look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.